thank you very much. And first, I'd like to thank BIC, of course, but especially Aruna. I met last year, and so we had the idea to organize this talk, and finally it was possible. And also because I'm sorry, I stayed a very short time here in Bangalore, and despite it is my first visit, but already my stay here was very, very rich, and I want to really thank all the people I met, a number are here, for their welcome and availability, so thank you very much. Yeah, now, and also I want to thank Aruna because she briefly put how I came to be interested by Sindh and Sindhi studies, because I know that it would have been a question for many, and of course I understand. So thank you for this. Now, yeah, what I plan to do, of course, it is from my own academic perspective, so mainly history and contemporary history. So, for example, even I have some knowledge about Mohenjo-Daro. I'm not a specialist at all, because mostly I've worked on 19th and 21st century Sindh and Sindhis. So first time as a historian, and second as anthropologist. What I want to say is that when you are working on the history of Sindh, even if it is recent history, 19th, 20th century, of course you are totally depending on the available sources. And every historian is obsessed by the issue of sources, because what you can know of history is totally related to the sources you will be able to find out, to collect, etc. And in Sindh, before colonization, as you know, the British came to Sindh in 1843. So before, especially even before the 18th century, there is a scarcity of sources. When I speak about sources, they are mostly written sources, manuscript sources. Of course, there are, and as you should know, before this British colonization, Persian was the main language used by the Sindhi intellectuals, historians, and others. So before, until the 18th century, and even the early 19th century, almost all the sources for knowing the history of Sindh are in Persian. They are available because they are regularly printed and reprinted, but they are in Persian, and some of them are not translated into any other language. So it is the first point. And when I was doing my research on different traditions, cultural, religious tradition of Sindh, so it was the first observation I had to do. It is this kind of scarcity of sources. So, of course, when you face such a challenge, you have to find out other ways to know the past. So that's why I developed also an interest, especially in iconography. So how different figures, sacred figures mostly, are represented through iconography. It can be through painting, it can be through sculptures of other. And also I was interested into the what we call material culture. So this can be the objects, but also the building, the build structures. So even if I'm not, of course, a specialist of this field, mainly iconography, which is related to art history, and the build structure, it could be related to architecture, I don't know, even also art history, I use this data for my own historical and even anthropological work. And so today what I intend to do is to, through the, how to say, okay, I give you the subtitle I was thinking about. The subtitle of this conference, I was thinking about something like I have to remember. I'm sorry. No, there are two process of building a tradition. So there is the symbolic construction of a community. Finally, what did a group of people form a community? For example, through worshipping such deity, such saint, and also, so this is what I call the symbolic construction of the community, but also it is to be compared with the material construction of the community. And the material construction of the community, it is the building, and how the build structure mirrors what the community think about itself, what in the build structure the community put and want the non-community people to see and to understand about themselves. So I would try to develop this approaches and perspective. But as I said, and I shall stop about these methodological issues, but which are very important. It was because of the scarcity of sources. Just an example, and then I go from these methodological issues. Only an example. Of course, you heard about the famous Sufi saint in Sindh, Lal Shabazz Kalanda. He's supposed to have died in 1274. So there is really a scarcity of sources about him before the British came. You can find some brief mention in 15th century sources, this and that, but almost nothing. And in comparison, I have a colleague in my institution who is working on Sufism in Egypt, and she did some research on a Sufi. He died in almost the same year than Lal Shabazz, and there is so many sources from his death in the late 13th century and in the 14th, 15th, so it's very impressive. So it is a kind of constatation about the scarcity of written sources in Sindh and maybe in the Indus Valley. And already I want you to know that if you ask me why, I have no answer. Because when you are in academia also, you should be very aware of what you don't know. And of course, it's not possible to know all and everything. Firstly, because we are totally depending on the sources. To explore this interaction between the symbolic construction of a community and the material construction of the community through the structure, through the building, the temple, the Sufi place, etc. I shall take two case studies. So the first, it is related to Julelal, and the second, it is related to Sufi. And also what I shall do, that I shall adopt a kind of balanced approach between Sindh and India, so between what is occurring nowadays in Sindh, in Pakistan, and also among the Sindhi in India. So it is just a map of the present day Sindh as an administrative unit, of course. But there is something interesting about Sindh. It is that the border of this Sindh changed throughout the century. Because if you look at the medieval sources, because there are some medieval sources, as you should know, Sindh was incorporating southern Punjab, what they call Siraiki belt, and Multan was the capital of Sindh, almost until the 13th, 14th century. And so after there was some changes, and finally Sindh was like it is here. But there is another thing to know. It is even in Pakistan, there are Sindhi speaking population outside of Sindh, and especially in the west. It is the west here. In the province of Balochistan, there is a district, especially of Las Bella, where they are speaking Sindhi, and also you can find some other area in other places, and even in India, in Rajasthan, and in Gujarat. Yeah, so about Julelal. Yes, thank you. Yes. Yeah, about Julelal, so if you have a look, because also there is the tradition, there is the belief, but I am talking about historical sources. So in the historical sources, be the building like this one, like this temple, be the literature, be the epigraphy, inscription of different monument temples, even so related to Julelal in Sindh, we don't have very old remains regarding this tradition. I'm not talking about the belief about Julelal, he appeared in the 10th century. I'm talking about the oldest remain we have regarding the tradition. So maybe this temple is one of the oldest of Julelal. And it is in the city of Nasirpur. It's not far from Hyderabad, Sindh. And this structure, this built structure, is very representative of the oldest temple of Julelal in Sindh. Nowadays, it is not anymore a temple. And in fact, this place is occupied by a family. And, but it is said that for the main celebration, the Hindu can come and celebrate, especially for Cheti Chand, etc. But what is of interest is the structure, the built structure, because as you can see, there is a square. It is a square building with 4 kind of tower and with the dome. This is very important. What in Sindh they call gunbaz, especially, what is also a Persian word. And so it should be one of the oldest temples. But unfortunately, I'm not archaeologist, and so I can't really say how old it is. But according what we know from other monuments in Sindh, it could be from a late 17th century or early 18th century. But in any case, for the followers of Julelal, it is the birthplace of Julelal, and so it is where this temple was commemorating the birth of Julelal. And inside the temple, still, there is a big piece of marble, and they used to say it was the gadi, the takht, the throne of Julelal, where he used to stay. Another building, great building devoted to Julelal in Sindh, and also it's not far from Hyderabad and not very far from Nasirpur. So it is a very big built structure. What we can see already, it is that the very symbol of this building is also this dome, but it's a little bit different if you compare with the previous one, especially it is a square always, but there are 8 sides. And the dome is upon this 8th side. And in this, they call the Darbar of Udelolal in Sindh, there are several domes like this one, and it's really a big structure. Here, Udelolal is the name of a village, but also in the oldest source devoted to Julelal, which was printed in late 19th century, Julelal is mostly named Udelolal or Amarlal. Julelal is not much used in the first publication. And yeah, this place is very important, and also it is said to be the most important place devoted to Julelal. And it was confirmed yesterday by a gentleman, but it is another story, okay? But yeah, because when Julelal disappeared in a well on his horse, and we will show this well, we can see it now, this well here. So it is the most sacred place of the whole complex. Yeah, so it is said that Julelal disappeared on his horse in the well. And so it is why it is the most sacred place. And as you should know, also Julelal asked his cousin, but there is more details, but I am giving the short story. He gave the lead of the pant to his cousin, Pagar. And so after Pagar, his descendant, known as Takur, they used to be the head of the pant of Julelal. And in the older sources, it was called Darya Pant, of course, the path of the river, of the Indus River. So still, this Takur, they were running this big complex devoted to Julelal. And this complex also, it should be, according to the local people, they said that it was built during Shah Jahan's rule, so late 17th century. Here we don't have really source, other source to confirm or not, but it is a local oral tradition. We know that Shah Jahan, during Shah Jahan rule, many buildings were completed. Shah Jahan, of the Mughal governor, he was very active in building. For example, in Tata, there is a big mosque and very beautiful mosque, Shah Jahan mosque, very famous, with decorative elements and so on. So it is possible that it was built during Shah Jahan's rule. But in any case, it would be 17th century. So not very old, Yeah, and in fact, the first iconographical representation of Julelal, they are on printed book, but there is another old temple, I shall turn back to it, always in Sindh. But, these booklets were published in the 1920s, and so you can see maybe the earlier representation of Julelal on the fish in the river. So you can see this one was published in Saqqar because Saqqar was very active in publication in the 1920s regarding Julelal especially. Almost half of the booklets devoted to Julelal, they were published in Saqqar. And then after, some in Hyderabad, Karachi, and also Shikarpur. Yeah, so on the left side, supposedly, Julelal is giving is transmitting the tradition to his cousin, Pagar. But it is not confirmed neither. But it looks like he's transmitting the tradition. And so it was published in 1923, but it is the third edition, and I could not locate the first one. I don't know when the first edition was printed. On the other, it is published in the same year. Yeah, and also this representation is very interesting. Maybe first because two different scripts are used, the Arabic Sindhi and Devanagari. And also it's very interesting, in the context of constructing a community, because as you can see, Udelolal is on the horse, and you can see who is before him, walking, and behind him. So the first is Pir Pato, is a very famous Sufi saint from Sindh, and the second is Lal Shabazz. And so these Sufi, they are represented as being, inferiors, sure, since they are working and is on the horse, and they are like also guard, also like kind of protector of Udelolal. But it's very interesting to see how this relationship between finally Udelolal and this Sufi is represented of this pictures. Yeah, and here is also called Shri Amarlal Udelolal Sahib. So Julelal, no, you cannot find this name in this 1920s. Yeah, I turn back to this Udelolal because it's a very big complex, and so we had a program still with some scholars from a university in Karachi who are architects. So it's very interesting also when you are doing research project to work with a team and also with different specialists, because you as historian, as anthropologist, you have your own perspective, but it's really very rich to cross your own approach with other specialists. And from even, we did a program in Sevan Sharif also, and there was an architect, and it was so amazing to see his own vision of the issue of Sevan, all this, very different, and I learned a lot. So similarly here with this complex, and this plan was drawn by one of these architects. So, yeah, in fact, you have two structures, but we can see the size, but if you want, this side, it is about 70 meters. So it's a pretty big structure. But it is like a fort with tower at each corner here. And this part, because you can see two main parts, this part, it is shared by Muslim and Hindu. So I think that she has represented in green the Muslim, and here in blue the Hindu. But so there is this temple devoted to Julelal. There is here a kind of dargah devoted to one Sher Tahir, and it is said that it is the name that the Muslim give to Julelal. And there is this space between both. Yeah. Also, there are other rooms. For example, you can find the sandals of Julelal in one of them. There is here the tree that he was able to make grow through a miracle, etc. So, and facing this main structure, you have this other part, and this other part is totally Hindu. Here, it is a well. You saw the picture. It is where is located the well, which is the most sacred part of the structure. And every year, because also what is very interesting, it is this. There is a dual structure in this darbar. And when I speak of structure, one of my main interests is what I call authority. Because when you have a tradition, who is transmitting the tradition? How do the people are learning a tradition? Who is telling this is right, this is not right? So every tradition, they have people, they can be priests or any other in all over the world you can find. And so also this organization, which is still running, it is said that it goes back to Julelal, because Julelal has got both Hindu and Muslim followers, and so he wanted them to share this space devoted to him. So from the Muslim side, the head, you have, they call a Sajada Nashin. It is a common word for the Sufi Dargah. So is Ghulam Abbas Sheikh, and on the Hindu side, the head, she's a woman, and she's titled Gadi Nashin. But what is very interesting, it is that she's Indian, and in fact, she lives in Mumbai. So twice a year, she visits this Udelolal for Cheti Chand, and she used to spend more than a month. And the other, it is for Asu, 6 months after Cheti Chand. And they are making the same celebration, exactly. So especially Barano, etc. And of course, the whole festival ended when they threw the Barano inside the well where Julelal is said to have disappeared. So it's a very interesting organization, but it is only in this place that such an organization, I mean, between Muslim and Hindu exists in Sindh. Because there are many other temples devoted to Julelal, but they are only, so to say, Hindu, so they are not shared with the Muslim. Yeah, here she's Matabina, so the Hindu Gadinashin. And she used to come with her sister and her sister daughter, and is the Ghulam Bashir. No, because so you have two ways. There are no written sources. We were able to collect some, but not before. I think there is something from the 1930s, but it is not about Hindu Muslim. It was following a dispute between Muslims for heading this site. So really, I don't know, but because to some extent there was a kind of competition for the control of the complex. So it is possible, but at some point the Muslims were dominating, and so the Hindu, they wanted to have their own complex, even if they still kept a small temple in the Muslim part. But you know, for example, for Cheti Chand, it is very interesting. So of course there are only Hindu who come. So the main celebration, it is in the Hindu part, and the Muslim part, they put the bazaar, all the people who are selling all and everything. So it is in the Muslim part. So, but of course, it is a very important question, but I don't know. But also, I think this is running since centuries, so we can imagine how many negotiations between different people, different clans, different this, different that. Sometimes a very good source for other places are the British archives. Because after the British came to Sindh, after 1843, very often where there was an issue between people for the control of a religious place, they went to the British court. And so you have many. But on Udarolal, I never found anything, so I don't know. Yeah, this is also maybe one of the oldest temples, and once again you can see it is the same structure, I mean basic structure. But in fact the photos of 1989 was shot by a French archaeologist, so 1999, it is 30 years back, I think. Yeah, and when she went, and never I saw any mention of this temple. It is in Gorabari. It is very south of Sindh. It is in the delta part. It's very close to the sea, this village. Never I saw any mention. Okay, so this French archaeologist, she was exploring some archaeological sites, and she saw this temple. I think when she went in 1989, there were 3 temples, and I went in 2016. Only one was staying, but also I went back in 2018. I didn't show pictures, but still the local Hindu, they were renovating the temple, and they were performing arti, and they had put a picture of Julelal in this temple. But what is very a pity when I say that 2 temples have disappeared, it is that in one of them there were wall painting, very beautiful, and unfortunately my friend, the archaeologist, she didn't take good picture of this painting. Only it is what she showed on this wall painting, but it is really precious because once again, I suppose it is the oldest pictorial representation related to Julelal. And unfortunately, we can see here a snake. So when you ask people, they say it is named Ketpal, he was a bodyguard of Julelal. you can see this kind of palanquin, you can see on a horse, you can see here also, you can see this kind of guard, and this guard, they are similar when we saw Udel Olal with Pirpato, and they're the same drawing, so it's very interesting also. So it's really a pity that this friezes, that this wall painting have disappeared. There is another part also when we saw a figure sat on a throne, so probably Julelal, but it's not very good neither. So according to my friend, also this temple should have been built in the 17th century, so similarly that the two previous ones from Nasserpur and Udel Olal. Yeah, so constructing and reconstructing, because during my late visit to northern Sindh, and it was 1 month back in October, I was very amazed because I had planned to visit this temple in Sakar. It is on the bank of the Indus River, and it is named Jindapir, another name for Julelal. And I was very amazed because the local community, they had demolished the previous one, and they are building a big one. But what is very interesting is that they are also keeping, so to say, the dome, a big dome as a symbol. You know, this one, it was already there from the old structure, but it was the only dome in the whole structure. It was a pretty big structure already, especially with room for the pilgrim, this and that, when there is Chetty Chan. But now they are building this big. And it's very interesting because this, so it's very close to the Indus River. You can see it from very far. And even from the opposite bank of the river, you know, there is Rohri, the city of Rohri. You can see the dome, so it's very interesting. Yeah, now, so we are traveling from Sindh to India. Okay, so I will not be very long about how Julelal became the Sindhi god, etc. More or less, but it is what many people said. And for example, I remember once in Mumbai, I was looking for a Julelal temple, so I was asking people from the neighborhood. They were not Sindhi, so I was asking Julelal temple, no, and after I asked Sindhi temple, and so they knew where was the Sindhi temple. Okay, yeah, so it's also very interesting to see how the Sindhi community in India are building new temple devoted to Julelal, but of course, the build structure and the architectural tradition is different, and the main difference is that the dome has been forgotten, of course, in the new environment of India. So there is this project, the Julelal Tirat Dam project, headed and thought by Professor Subhadra Anand, following her PhD. She did, I don't remember when, in the 1990s, maybe. It is National Integration of Sindhi. It's a very good study of how the Sindhi migrated to India, how they resettle, the issue with the specific identity as Sindhi, etc. And finally, she went to the conclusion that one way, not the only one, but one way for the preservation of the Sindhi identity in India was to build a pilgrimage site, not only temple only, I mean, a pilgrimage, because she was saying, and it is in the conclusion of her book, that, for example, the Christians, they have Roma, the Muslim Mecca, the Hindu, Varanasi, this and that. And so she conclude, but it was a kind of hypothesis also, that if there was a big pilgrimage center, specifically Sindhi, so with Julelal as the main deity, it could help to preserve the Sindhi identity. And so this project was started now some years back, and still they have completed the first phase. No, sorry, I forgot to talk about the location. Yeah, because also it's very interesting when Subhadra is discussing about what would be the best location for this Tirat Dam. And so, of course, should we go where the majority of the Sindhi, I don't know, or another place? And so finally they decided to build it in Kutch and very close to the border with Sindh. And of course, because you know, when they started the project, the chief minister was Narendra Modi in Gujarat. So they had to ask, because it was a government land, for buying it. And so, I'm quoting Subhadra, so Modi told her, you should build a very big statue of Julelal. It would be a symbol of all the effort the Sindhi have done in India and how active they are and they were, etc. And this big statue can be seen from very far also. And so in the idea of Subhadra and the other, they wanted the statue of Julelal to be seen from Sindh also, I suppose. But still, it is not. But I think they plan to build a 20 meters statue. And Julelal looking at Sindh, oriented near the west to Sindh. So it is a very ambitious project, but still the first phase has been completed. And so there is what they call the small temple, and they have started celebrated Cheti Chand in this small temple. Yeah, and also I did an interview with the architect who is in charge of the project. So the architect is Nishan Lal, is from Delhi. And I was very interested how he went to imagine what was a Julelal temple. He's not Sindhi. I asked him, how did you document, or what did Subhadra and the committee told you? Did they tell you to do this and that? And how did you find the representation? How did you imagine? And so first he told me that he was mostly free to organize himself, but already he has built many temples in India. And finally, so he focused on this temple in South India, Ainhole. Personally, I don't know. Before this, I didn't know. But also, his argument was that this place, and especially the Durga temple, so belongs, and I quote him, to the cradle of ancient Hindu temple architecture. So for him, he wanted, but I suppose, like the committee of the Julelal Tirat Dam, this temple to be in the continuity of the ancient Hindu temple architecture. And finally, you can see, especially with the map of the plan, that it is similar to some extent, especially so you are going, the statue of the deity is at the end of the building, and you have to walk through different steps, so to say, to reach the statue. And of course, also, this temple has a kind of tower, but closest to what is called usually Shikara, for the usual name for the tower of the Hindu temple, but more from the north tradition than from the south tradition. Yeah, so this is this temple which has been completed, and also the statues of Julelal was installed. Yeah, so just it is the kind of transition because now it's a few words very brief about the Sufi tradition, but this poster was so in this Udal al-Darba, and it's very interesting to see that other people, they put Shah Abdul Latif and Julelal, and also the main inscription above, it is written Sabka Malik Ek Hai. And this formula now in Sindh, it is more and more popular. I know, not even in Sindh, but now in many Hindu temple and Sindh, you can see this. It's pretty recent. Some years back, I never saw this inscription. So it's interesting to see how the people from Udal, they wanted to put a kind of link between Shah Abdul Latif and Udal. Yes, so briefly, a few words on the Sufi tradition and especially how it was transmitted in India. Because, of course, everybody knows Ram Panjwani, and especially for the role he played in promoting Julelal as the Sindhi god, as the Sindhi community god. But something which is less known, it is that also less known, no, I suppress. But he was very fond of Sufi poetry. And you know, before focusing on Julelal, Ram Panjwani, he did publish Sufi poetry, and even before partition, because he was born in 1911, and still in Sindh, in Karachi, was very active. He was already teaching Sindhi literature, but also he was giving many conferences on the Sufi poetry, this and that. And so even in India, there is no date, but I think the first edition, it was in the 1950s, so soon after he migrated to India, almost the first book he did publish were related to Sufi poetry in Sindhi, the kind of compilations of the main Sufi authors. And not only Shah Abdul Latif, many other Sufi poets. So, So after partition, but even before, there were a kind of Sufi tradition among the Hindu of Sindh. And when I speak of Sufi tradition, so it doesn't mean that they used to sing Shajori Salo or any Sufi poetry. It means that they have been initiated by a Sufi master and they had become themselves Sufi. But for being Sufi, there is no need specifically to be Muslim. It is not related to your, I would say, daily practice of your ancestral religion. So Sevan is a very important Sufi town in Sindh, and especially there was a very important Sufi, Mulchand Fakir. He has been initiated by this Janab Hazrat Sayyid Raki al-Shah Sufi al-Qadiri, and he's also a very important poet. He published lot of Sufi poetry in Sindhi. So this Mulchand, he himself was a Sufi. He was doing rituals in the Darbar or Mazar of Lal Shabazz Kalandar, and he was doing a lot of meditation himself, and himself he had initiated Sufi among his Hindu followers. But he refused to migrate. He wanted to stay in Sewan, close to Lal Shabazz Kalandar, so he died in 1962. But so in Sewan, he has some place called Astan or Makbaro. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to be very... Yeah, so this Gaimal Modvani, he was his main follower, so himself a Hindu Sufi, and he migrated. So Mulchand stayed in Sevan, but all his followers, they migrated to India. And in India, they reconstruct this tradition of the Sufi Mulchand Fakir. So first they settled in Ulhasnagar, but after because they were working in Ulhasnagar, of course, but after, they were dispatched in different parts of India, and finally they decided to build a new place in Haridwar. And so today, this Sufi tradition is still continued in Haridwar, so in northern India. And also, this Hindu follower himself, they initiated new followers, and also they used to publish literature, Sufi literature, and always in Sindhi. In the beginning, it was published in Arabic, Sindhi, but now they are still publishing in Devanagari, Sindhi. So this is what I wanted to talk about tonight, and thank you very much for your attention.
Professor, just a question. Since the literary sources were unavailable, there are very few to rely on. What about the oral tradition, which I'm sure would have passed down by word of mouth? And did you explore that as an anthropologist, and a historian?
Yeah, of course, there is oral tradition, of course. But so I would say that it implies to spend much time, a lot of time, because, for example, we had a program in Sevan for 4 years, and every year we were staying 1 month there. We were 5 French, and with other people maybe 7. So, you collect the story. One version of the story, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700. So you see how to manage, how to deal. It is a work in itself, I mean. And so, of course, we have collected, but already, in relation with this Lal Shabbat, there are so many differences between the version from this category of people, this one, this and that. It's very difficult to deal with. And otherwise, as I said, you will have to spend a lot of time and to also ask many people to work on it. So we didn't neglect it because we used to collect some, but for sure, it was not enough.
What is the reason behind the use of the color white and gold on temples and statues? Is there any symbolic meaning behind those colors? And the second question is, who is funding this temple in Kutch? How did they collect the money? Who's funding?
In Kutch?
Yeah.
Okay. So I start with the second. Donors. Especially, I will not quote names, but one of them is very famous in India. No, you can find it on internet because they have a website, so of course you can find it easily. And about the colors, it's a very important question and not so easy to understand because once again there are different versions about the symbolic meaning of the color. So usually the white is associated with purity, and gold, it is more complicated. There are different meanings. But very often, the issue of power, be it religious or political, they are using the same symbols. And for example, the gold was a symbol of power for the kings, this and that. So gold is a symbol of power, of majesty, and all this.
It doesn't have, the white color doesn't have anything to do with, like the setting. If it's like a desert, then having white being...
With
the desert, it's a hot setting, so the color white wouldn't absorb.
I never heard.
Heat. No.
It doesn't mean that it has nothing to do.
This is not very profound, but you were talking about these gumbazes falling down or collapsing for whatever reason.
No.
No, the ones that you said had disappeared.
excuse me,
Yeah.
in Gorabari. Yeah. Yeah.
Mohenjo-daro has essentially disappeared because of natural causes. Does the proximity to the sea or the fact that it's in the delta have a lot to do with
Yeah.
the or is it anything
Yeah,
else?
there are two main answers and a third related to the second. Yeah, the first, it is very close near the ocean in the delta, and it's a very special area. And yeah, so really the sea is very corrupting about the building. But also, it is because the local Hindu has left. It is what the local population told us. And so nobody was maintaining this before this renewal I was talking about. And so I think that especially the dome started to collapse. And after it has collapsed, the local people, they used to take stones for their own building. But this happens everywhere, you know.
But Mohenjo-daro is protected by the government, and in spite of that,
I totally agree with you that the Sindh government have a lot to do because there are so many architectural remains. But also, I mean, Mohenjo-daro is different because it is also protected by UNESCO, no, how you say in English, United Nations things, and yeah. The gentleman.
Sorry, okay. I have two questions, Professor. One is, you mentioned in the architecture, etc., the Persian influences. So prior to the, Sindh community being there, like, was it more because of the rulers there, or was there some origins of the Sindhi community from Persia? That is one question.
But what are you talking about? I'm sorry. Julelal Tiradam?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And the Udairulal. And the second question is what you mentioned in the Udairulal, the synergy between the Hindu and Muslim. It's a very relevant example for our times here. So I'm very curious to know, like, are there like young people from Karachi or from India as well, like kind of taking on that tradition of poetry or literature? Is it being seen in more contemporary writings, or, is there anything like that you've come across?
But for the first question,
First question, I'm just curious about, and forgive my lack of knowledge here, but I don't know if I was just curious, like, whether part of this community migrated from elsewhere and therefore carried with it the Persian influences like the Parsi community, or was it an influence of the Persian rulers in that region, that architecture and then all of that?
No, but you're not talking about the Julelal Tiradam.
I'm talking about the Sindhi community.
But in Sindh or because Julelal Tiradam, there is nothing
not the Julelal Tiradam, the Udairulal.
Okay.
Yes.
Persian, yes, so probably, but more because this building are supposed to have been built during Mughal. So it was more a Mughal influence in terms of architecture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and probably because it was a specific Mughal, how you say, he was ruling the province in the name of Shah Jahan, who was especially active. So I suppose that he took the Mughal patterns because the Mughal was very great builders, as you know, in Fatehpur Sikri, in so many places. So yeah, it was a Mughal typical influence.
Sir, can you tell me exactly date and year of our century for Ishtadev Julelal? Birth time, exactly date, year, approximately. Which century or which year? One thing.
No, I can tell you what the tradition says. In Common Era, it said that Julelal was born in 950. No, excuse me. I'm confusing. No, 10th century. According to the tradition, Julelal was on earth in the 10th century.
So as I heard or seen, many friends have seen two places. One is in Nasarpur, birthplace. From Udirulal has come on half afterwards. Second place in Sakhar. From here he has gone on this palo, fish. So both places are not in good condition. So government or international fraternity, Ishtadev of Sindhis, just like Guru Nanak Dev, this Kartarpur, Nankana Sahib, they have given full international heritage status. So suppose we will not get international heritage status, here we are telling it is Ishtadev. After 10, 15 years, both places will be disappear, or
Yeah.
just like it will be.
Yes.
So what is system or something?
But
for this?
you know, frankly, since the years I'm going to Sindh, I feel there is a change, and I have two examples. There is a Julilal temple in Karachi near Custom House. When I started to come, it was closed. It was closed, it was abandoned. They had put a shop, and some 5 years back, the Karachi municipality, with the architect, they decided to reopen the temple, and it was totally renovated by the Karachi municipality. So now it is working, people are coming. And another one, it is Varun Dev Mandir, it is in Manora, in Karachi, you know Manora?
Yes.
Of course, you know the island. Also, this one, when I started to come, it was closed. It was abandoned. And a private Karachi foundation also decided to start the renovation, and it has been renovated, and now it is open, and now it is working. So, but also, frankly speaking, in Sindh, there are many, many architectural remains. For example, you have the Buddhist stupa, and especially the big one near Mirpur Khas is very big, and it's totally... so there are many, and yes, especially it should be international aid, but also a last thing, this I was forgetting to tell. You know, this Manora temple,
Yes.
Varun Dev,
Yes.
he was funded by the American Embassy of Pakistan, the renovation.
Yes. Thank you.
Descending from the Thakur family, the Julelal family, slowly I have seen 80% of the Sindhis of Thakur has become Pathan and it's ascending to Muslims. So 80% of Sindhis have been forcefully or they have converted to Sindh. Do you have some glimpse of this? Do you have any awareness?
Are you...
The Muslims, the Sindhi Muslims, 80% from the Thakur has become Pathan, and from Pathan they have become Muslim Sindhis.
but what do you call Thakur? Because there are different meanings.
Thakur is also from the path of Julelal ascending. From the Julelal family
Okay.
is in the Thakur, like the Pandit. you
Not,
call
not
that.
Rajput
No,
Thakur.
no, not
Okay.
Rajput Thakur.
So I didn't hear anything about in recent years, especially. But I mean, because all these Thakur, because they are the name of the priest of Julelal, they have all migrated to India. Now in Sindh, you can't find any. And so it was not easy for me to find the Thakur family in India. So until now, I met only two Thakur family, one here in Bangalore, the other in Ulhasnagar. And so they never told me about this issue. I'm sorry. What? Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't. Okay. I don't know. I should have go next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for the lovely, insightful talk on our community this evening. We really enjoyed the talk. The one question that I have is it right to say that Sindh is the birthplace of Sufism? Or did Sufism come into Sindh, or did it grow out of Sindh?
No, Sindh is not the birthplace of Sufism. Sufism was born in the Near East, in countries like Syria and Iraq, especially. It is where it started to develop. And because also in this time it was the main cities of the Muslim, especially Damascus, and after Baghdad, they were capital. And so it is especially in this area that the first Sufi appear. First they were Renaissance, and after they formed this Sufi order. Yeah. And from there, they migrated to different parts of the world, to the west and to the east. Yeah. But in Sindh, South Asia, and especially Indus Valley, mainly the Sufis, they started to come in the 13th century, but first from Iraq, Iran, and you know why? Because there was a Mongol invasion. It is when Genghis Khan came from the north and they destroyed all in Iran. They went to Baghdad. They took Baghdad in 2058, something like this. And so many population there, they ran, and especially the Sufi, and that's how they came to South Asia, to India. Before there were but a few. The main Sufi population went to Indus Valley, in Multan especially. One of the most important was Bauddin Zakaria in Multan, and also after in Sindh, we quote Pir Pato and Lal Shabazz Qalandar also. I can't. Yes. Yes, so it is a tradition of Mulchan Fakir. Yeah. Yeah, and it was very interesting because the gentleman who is heading now this Sufi tradition, his name is Bassam Jetvani, and he told me, because I asked him, what did you select Haridwar? Of course, Haridwar is a well-known religious place, but I mean in relation with Sufi. And so he told me, his answer was, because we cannot go to the Indus River, so we go to the Ganga. It was his response. So still they're organizing every year the annual fair of this tradition and so on. Yeah.
Good evening, Professor. Thank you for this knowledgeable course, what you are giving to everybody, to all the Sindhis. My question is very simple but slightly complicated. In most of your talks, you are saying that Hindus visited the temples. Why not it could be also the Sindhis visited the Sindhi temple, and why Sindhis are not considered to be as Sindhis, like Marathi as Marathis, Gujarati as Gujaratis, and Sindhi as Sindhis. You're taking it everywhere as Sindhi Hindus. So, as history somewhere saying that Sindhis were Hindus or Sindhis were not Hindus?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
No, my question is that every religion, like Marathis are Marathis, Gujaratis are Gujaratis. Like we Sindhis are called as Hindus. Why not Sindhis? Does history plays any part or role in that?
No, if I can explain it, he is saying that why are you referring to Hindu Sindhis and non-Hindu Sindhis? Why not just call them Sindhis? No, I'm not just trying to.
Yes. No, so it is, sir, it is what you ask, why I am referring to Hindu Sindhi and non-Hindu Sindhi. If you prefer, I can refer to Muslim Sindhi and non-Muslim Sindhi. No, because even we don't have to exaggerate the importance of religion, this is a difference. I'm sorry. But I feel that you are not happy with my answer. No, but if you can develop. No.
Professor, when partition happens, all Sindhis have come, so that generation left history also there. So many people, even I say current generation or young generation means 40, up to 40 years now also, they don't know more history about Sindh. Roots are there, but we have started everything here. Suppose you know Julelal Bhagwan's Jyot, we have taken from there directly and put in Ulhasnagar, in Bangalore also, in many places. So we have created everything here and we cannot go there frequently or easily. So our community is grateful and very thankful to you. Even from India, we are not done so much research or something, and from France, you are doing so much research and doing so much great job. And coming here and telling, and we inspire from you, and we feel that because of internet, Sindhi language and Sindhi culture has been saved. If internet was not there 20 years before, we have gone away from everything. From you, we want many young generations, people through internet, through theoretical, practical. Again, we have to go to see roots, and this is big asset. And I always say that we have given key of locker to our children, but they do not know what so much big asset is there. They even don't open the locker and see the asset. And you have come, you have taken that asset, and now you're telling us everything. So we know we are, our Sindhi community is thankful to you always, sir. Thank you. And our group, Mr. Bharat Amanani, our other group, we want to honor you also at this stage after this talk is over, sir. Thank you.
Mine is a small observation that I wanted to share with you. Shia Muslims who originated from Persia, they say that they address Julelal as Ali. They also pray to Julelal. And they worship him, they said. One of my Shia Muslim friends said that.
Yes, but I think he's talking about Lal Shabazz calendar. Because
the same thing but a different name, right?
Yeah, because now even this name Julelal is applied to Lal Shabazz calendar.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is another issue, but difficult to answer. But you're right, yeah.
And one question. You being French, born in France, how did Sindhi attract you?
So I put it short. No, because very young I was interested by history, and I was interested by non-Western civilizations. So first I started with Egypt, the pyramids, this and that. And so when I started to study at the university, I traveled over the world, and I was interested by different places. And very soon, I was doing history. First, I focused on some community, especially the Aga Khan's follower. So I did my PhD on this. And that's how I came to India. Because first I started in Mumbai, because there was a very important Ismaili Aga Khani community still there in Kolaba, Karimabad. And also they told me that after partition, many migrated to Karachi and Sindh. So it's how I went to Karachi for this work on the Ismaili. And then I learned that there were Ismaili Sindhi. So in southern Sindh, near Tata or Badin, this part, there are many Sindhi Ismaili villages. And that's how I went to discover the Sindhi culture and Sufism, etc.
Professor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question which is slightly removed from your discussion. I was just wondering about the Sadhu Aswani mission. Where do you locate that in the context of this whole thing of Sindhi religiosity?
Yes. Yeah, there are different Sindhi spiritual movements, as you know, but of course, this Sadhu is one of the most famous. I never really focus on him, even if I visited Pune, the main places. But what was of interest for me, what I did study in Sadhu Vasvani, it is his approach to Sufism, because he has published books on Sufism, and so it was very interesting to see how he used Sufism, and when I say Sufism, it is especially Sufi poetry in Sindhi, how this has nurtured his own reflection and the building of his own spirituality. But, and also Sadhu Vasvani, like many other Sindhi spiritual people and intellectuals, including Rampanjvani, they were very much influenced by a spiritual movement named Theosophical Society. I'm sure you have heard about. Because this Theosophical Society, it was founded in New York by some American, but they wanted to build a kind of universal religion, mostly inspired by Indian religion. And in fact, the founder of the Theosophical Society, they went to India, and even one, Annie Besant, she became president of the Congress of the National. So she was also involved into nationalists. It is another story. But in Sindh, Annie Besant, she went to Karachi and Hyderabad in late 19th century. And she, through her speeches, because also she translated Hindu religious scripture into English, this and that. So the Sindhi intellectuals, they were very attracted. And one of them, because these theosophists, they were looking for the universal wisdom. And according to them, the founder, Elena Blavatsky, she thought that there was a kind of place in the Himalaya mountain where wise men used to gather, and they were still holding the primitive universal wisdom. So the Sindhis transformed this discourse of the Theosophical Society, and they went to claim, both Muslim and Hindu, I'm sorry, sir, but they said that, in fact, this wisdom the Theosophists were talking about was Sindhi Sufism. You can find it in the writing of Shah Jorisalo. So, yes, I know what I am talking about. So, even Rampanjvani himself, he was a member, and I found archives in Karachi of this Theosophical Society in the 1930s, and Sadhu Vasvani, in his memoir, he put that also he used to attend the lecture in the Theosophical Society about this conception of universal brotherhood, this and that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my question is about the community being very successful in certain professions, industry, and so on. They're very vibrant. So has your study come across that? Have you researched that and the reasons why this community is in specific?
Yeah, so you are talking about the economic side.
Yeah.
It is not my field, but there are studies about. There are several books about. There is one by Marc Anthony Falzon. It is named Cosmopolitan Network. It is about the Sindhi all over the world, how they went to build these international networks. And also there is one by Claude Markowitz. It is more in colonial, how the Sindh work is. So mostly is studying the Shikarpuri and the Hyderabadi, how they went to build this network, some from Shikarpur to Central Asia, Hyderabadi, and also because the Sindhi communities, not only most of the trader communities of India, they developed that network throughout the British Empire. So since the British You can find them. They were dominating the world. So the Sindhi trader, but also Gujarati and many other, they used to follow the road of the British Empire, and they used to settle all over the world. But so, if you want, there is the book by Claude Markowitz, especially, on this colonial phase, and Marc-Anthony Felson after colonization.
My question is more on, when you talk about the creation of the Julelal Tirtha, the new setup of the temple and...
Julelal Tirtha.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're setting up a new, sacred space and everything. Basically, the Sindhi community is a very flourishing community, and they are successful all over. Why do you think that they are not doing the same effort within the initial structure, the real structure, and moving away from that? Why do you think, is it something governmental where the country is not allowing them to, like Kartarpur, the Sikhs wanted it and it happened finally. I mean, it's taken years, but it has happened. Do you think the Sindhi community at some point wanted that to happen there in the original area of Nasirpur, where the real Julelal, like you say, the well is there and the whole setup
so
is there?
now I shall not dare to say the Hindu Sindhi. But no, you know why? Especially if you compare with the Sikhs, because among the Sindhi, there were no centralization process which occur among the Sikhs for different reasons, but especially through the confrontation with the Mughal, this and that. So in Sindh, this community were always fragmented community. And even, for example, the Darbar Odelolal, even now this Thakur gentleman, he said it is the most important place. So the lineage of the Gadinashin should be supposed to be the head of the tradition, but not. And even in Sindh, I have visited maybe in Sindh 20 Julelal temple. They are all independent. They are transmitting a similar tradition, we can say, but of course they know each other. But in terms of authority, they are all independent. So this is a very important point, but also difficult to document. But I suppose that it is also related to the social structure of the community, of the location, because all these communities, they are very localized and very attached to their own locality. Yeah. But no centralization process. It is the main answer.
And just going from there, that do you see any kind of, the government, like you said, that the Karachi government or the municipality redid the Kharadar thing, temple. Similarly, do you think that do you see that they would be working on other temples, and maybe why not get a UNESCO heritage site tag or something like that?
Yes, but also this is the matter of how to select the monument you will propose to UNESCO, because I am sorry, but in terms of size, there are many bigger monuments in Sindh. Because, so it doesn't mean that, of course, they are not important and of interest, but there are many monuments which would need to be repaired, and even the Sindhi, even the inhabitants of Karachi, as you know, they are mostly Muhajir. They are always complaining that the government is not doing its work for this preservation, and there are a number of private associations, usually run by architects, who are trying to do it, but of course they need a lot of funding. So. Yeah.
Do you feel that 100% have come out and everything we have excavation? More than the road. 1/3 has also come out.
Yeah. Yeah, but so knowing the size of Mohenjo-daro, you can imagine the funding it would need. It's only an issue because there are, yeah, you're totally right, sir. So it would need to be, yes?
Firstly, I appreciate all the knowledge
Yeah,
that...
excuse me.
Sorry, I'll repeat myself. Firstly, I appreciate all the knowledge that you have shared with us. Like someone rightly pointed out that a lot of the younger generation among the Sindhi community is not fully aware of our roots back there. Is there some literature or some books that you would suggest that we could read up on to catch up on all of that?
Yeah. Yes, I think that we can provide some reference, especially through the Sindhi Culture Foundation.
Yes, that will be helpful. Thank you.
No, I mean to draw a kind of list of basic reference, so we can work.
Because on my own, I've been trying to look up books and read some, but I think if it comes from an expert, it will be much more fruitful.
Yeah, but so I can forward, yes.
Thank you.
If I may, sorry, but I know it's getting very late, but last comment, Professor. I mean, with the help of the organizers, if everyone interested could give their names, and if there was some possibility right here to begin a cultural exchange of sorts with people studying at the University of Karachi, then maybe we can flag it off and see what comes out of it. Because I'm particularly so interested because it's so symbolic, an example of the synergy. It would be relevant for the whole of India. Like, I'm non-Sindhi, but I'm very interested in this because, you know, I'm Indian. So,
okay,
so please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
अजब उतर पार दे ताड़े की तवार अजब उतर पार दे ताड़े की तवार हारन हर संभारा मुझा सरिया त्या संगार अजब मुझे यार वसण गावे सकिया अजब उतर पार दे ओ अजब उतर पार दे ककर तो कार करे अजब उतर पार दे ककर तो कार करे वसे तो वड पुड़ियो कालक खंड भरे विजण निशान वरे मुझ सकार सुख दिए हो तो के सिंधड़ी सारे हो तो के सिंधड़ी सारे